Hey everyone, welcome to Neural Notes, show where AI comes alive. Smash that subscribe button and ride the innovation wave.
Welcome to The Explainer. You know, every single thought you've ever had, every memory, every feeling, it's not magic. It's a physical process happening inside your head. Today, we're going inside the machine to see exactly how it works as we explore the incredible world of cognitive neuroscience. For the longest time, if we wanted to study the mind, the only thing we could really do was watch what people did. But things have changed. Now, we can go way beyond just observing behavior and actually peek inside the brain to see how the thinking gets done. Right? So for centuries, psychology was all about the outside. Measuring how fast someone could react or counting how many answers they got right. But cognitive neuroscience, that's like getting a backstage pass. It lets us see the internal stuff, the chemical reactions, the nerve cells firing, that actually creates those behaviors as they happen.
So, to really understand something as complex as the brain, we have to start small. I mean, really small. We have to start with its most basic fundamental unit.
The human brain is just packed with them. Over 100 billion of these incredible cells called neurons. Literally everything we do, everything we think, everything we feel is all thanks to them.
But here's the kicker. A single neuron, all by itself, is pretty much useless. The real magic, the power, isn't in one cell. It's in the trillions, yes, trillions of connections they make with each other. That's the network where all the action happens.
So how is this tiny little cell built for such a massive job? Well, it all comes down to its unique structure, where its shape is perfectly designed for what it needs to do.
At its core, a neuron is just an information relay. Its strange, long shape isn't some kind of accident. It's the absolute key to its function, letting it send signals across distances.
So let's follow a signal. First, information comes into the neuron through these branch-like structures. You can kind of think of them as the cell's antennas, constantly listening for messages from other neurons. Now, once a signal coming in is strong enough, it gets sent down this long, single extension, kind of like a wire carrying a current away from the main cell body. This is the neuron's transmission cable. And at the very end of that cable, the message has to jump across a microscopic gap to reach the next cell. These three parts, the receiving branches, the dendrites, the long transmission cable, the axon, and that tiny gap, the synapse, they form the fundamental pathway for every single message in your brain. Okay, so we know the path the information takes, but what is the message? How does it actually travel inside a single neuron, from the input all the way to the output? Well, the answer is pure electricity. I want you to imagine a tiny little bubble of fluid that's floating in a sea of more fluid. That bubble's skin, the cell membrane, is the gatekeeper. It's what separates the world inside the neuron from the world outside. Okay, now the real secret to the neuron's electrical signal lies in these tiny little charged particles called ions. And they're floating all over the place, both inside and outside the cell. And here's the part that makes it all possible. When a neuron is just resting, not doing anything, there's this very specific electrical imbalance. The fluid outside is packed with positive ions, but the inside has fewer of them, which gives it an overall negative charge. This difference is absolutely key. This stable negative charge is called the resting potential. It's the neuron's baseline, its default off state, and the cell's membrane works really hard to keep it that way. So that leads to a pretty interesting question, doesn't it? If a neuron's natural state is negative, if it's just sitting there in the off position, how does it ever flip the switch to actually send a signal? The signal itself is called an action potential. It's this super brief, really dramatic moment where the electrical charge completely flips. For a split second, the inside of the neuron, which is normally negative, becomes positive. This is the on switch. This whole process is like an incredibly fast 4-act play. First, the neuron is at rest, nice and negative. Then, a signal arrives and it starts to shake things up. Suddenly, channels in the membrane fly open. The charge spikes to positive, and then, just as fast, the whole system slams shut and resets. It's back to negative, ready for the next signal. What's really cool is that this electrical spike isn't a flash that lights up the whole neuron at once. No, instead, it's a pulse that travels. Think of the wave at a sports stadium, that ripple of energy that moves down the line. That is exactly how this little pulse of positive charge races down the axon. So when you put all this together, the big takeaway is just, well, it's astonishing. Our entire mental world, every single thought, memory, and feeling, is built from the ground up
by these tiny biological machines, passing simple electrical sparks from one to the next.
We've seen the spark, we've seen the fundamental language of the brain, but the bigger mystery, and what we'll dive into next time, is how trillions of these simple little sparks combine to create the infinite richness and poetry of a single human experience.